Look, this might be a bit of a hot take, but if you're 35 plus in Canada or the US and you are not a millionaire, bro, you're failing at life, honestly. And some of you might think that I'm joking here. But the sad truth is that in this economy today, in this age where we have access to so much technology, education, resources for very low cost, there's really no reason why you can't teach yourself how to become a millionaire and execute on that goal. Now, I'm not saying you need to be worth some crazy multiple like, 10, 20 million. No. That is challenging, I will say. But if you are not worth at least $1 million net, your net worth, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. Look, all you got to do is just invest basically your entire income for 10 years in low-cost ETFs. XEQT is a great one here in Canada. If you're trading on the TSX, we also have VFV, which is another good one. These are diversified index funds. So XEQT, and I'm not sponsored by the company who makes this ETF, iShares, by the way, but basically it's a core equity portfolio. So it includes US equities, Canadian equities, and some international as well. And that just gives you basically this very diversified portfolio. You should see returns of anywhere from, 8 to 10% on average per year. So if you're investing your entire income into ETFs and you're doing that consistently, for like 10 years, starting at 25, there's really no reason why you can't reach $1 million in this day and age. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, Lucas, how the heck am I supposed to invest my entire income? Well, look, I get it. It might not be easy, especially if you're not living at home with your parents. But there are still ways to do it. And you don't have to necessarily invest your entire paycheck. If you make a good salary, maybe you're taking home net, $6,000 a month. You can be investing at least $3,000 a month if you're frugal. Okay? There's really no excuses. $3,000 a month, that's $36,000 a year. After 10 years at a 10% annual return, you'll be damn near $1 million. And it's not to say that if you hit 35 and you have less than $1 million invested, that you should just give up. Like, I'm not saying that, but you should definitely be reconsidering what your priorities are in life, because reaching financial freedom and hitting these big numbers gives you flexibility in your life. So let's say you're working a full-time job and, maybe it's okay, it's paying the bills, but you want to try something different, you want to pivot. Maybe it's stressful and you want to take on a lower paying job that's maybe in a completely different field that you would be starting, at an entry-level wage or salary. Well, now you have the flexibility to do that. You can really do whatever you want because your portfolio will sustain you. So, of course, $1 million at 4%, which is a pretty conservative number for what you can pull out each year indefinitely, would be around $40,000 a year. Okay. Now, I know for most people that wouldn't be enough to survive, let alone live comfortably, especially if you have a family. But you're getting there and you're very close. If you keep pushing and you keep investing, you will get to a point where you will be able to cover your entire lifestyle with your investments. But 1 million, that's the milestone I think that everyone in Canada who grew up in Canada or the US and has access to internet should be able to achieve by 35. So if you're watching this and you're not even close, but you're nearing 35 years old, you should maybe reconsider some things in your life. And it's not to say that you're doing things bad or, you're being a bad person, but maybe you're not doing enough. And maybe you're going to find yourself really working until, a lot later than you actually want to be working full time. And so having that financial flexibility in your mid to late 30s is going to really allow you to live the life that, quite honestly, most people can't. There are so many people out there who are going to work and they don't really like it, or maybe they're not feeling free in their life. Money will allow for that freedom to come into play. So a lot of people will say, well, I don't really care about money. It's not the most important thing in my life. And I get it. You shouldn't worship money, okay? But the problem is when you don't have it, that's when you start to really need it and depend on it. Once you have it, you're basically set. You don't have to worry about where your next paycheck's coming in, if you're going to be able to make your mortgage payment, because you want to structure all these expenses to align with the returns that your portfolio is sustainably generating, right? And I said 4% before. That's a pretty standard rule in personal finance. 4% should not be the average returns your portfolio is producing, because if it is, then in my opinion, you're invested in things that are way too conservative, especially in today's economy, right? Inflation, housing, the cost of living is going up and up and up every single year. So if you're investing in, say, a GIC and you're getting a 4% return, I don't think that's the best use of your capital. That's my opinion. Of course, it depends what you're earmarking your funds for, right? Like for me personally, I'm very high growth at this point because I'm young. I'm 25, so I'm balls to the wall investing, as much as I possibly can in equities, right? Yes, they can be very volatile in the short term, and some years you will be down, but over a 10-year horizon, you should find that the growth is pretty solid, and it's should be, like I said before, between 8 to 10% on average. So I just hope that this video is a wake-up call for some of you who are out there and are nowhere close to hitting the $1 million net worth mark by 35. And if you're struggling, this is the channel for you. This is the channel where I'm going to tell you what you need to know about money, personal finance, and how you can grow your wealth and your financial freedom. So yeah, hit that $1 million mark by 35. It's not that, okay, it is hard, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that it's super easy, but it is simple. And you'll have to make some sacrifices along the way. But if you don't hit 1 million by 35, then I got news for you. Your life is going to be very, very challenging, because you're going to be, in your 40s struggling with money, struggling to make your mortgage payments or your car payments, or, just paying for rent, because you have to physically go to work to make money. Your portfolio is not producing enough returns, not generating enough cash flow that you can use to then fund your lifestyle. Well, you might say, well, I have this business or this YouTube channel or whatever that's generating passive income, right? Maybe you're generating $10,000 a month in passive income. That's pretty good. But I would argue that, hey, look, if you're making that much online, you should easily be able to invest, have over $1 million in investable assets by the time you hit 35. So if you're watching this, that is your goal, right? That is your goal, 1 million by 35. I think that's conservative. I think, in my opinion, you should be aiming for 1 million by 30, but that's just me, right? And of course, we're all in different situations. Some people start later. You might be in your late 20s or early 30s, and you haven't invested a dime. And that, my friends, is the school system failing you, right? Your parents, unless they're rich themselves, they probably didn't teach you about money or investing, okay? And the school system didn't teach you about money or investing. Yeah, sure, you might have a business class or whatever, but at the end of the day, they don't give you the skills and the tools you really need to get ahead financially. So you got to take matters into your own hands. You got to access the resources available. Hit up your local library, start reading books about personal finance, entrepreneurship, escaping the rat race. And hopefully you can actually use that advice, and as well as videos on my channel, you can use that to fund your freedom lifestyle, right? So you can ultimately live the life that you want to live and not struggle to make ends meet. And making a lot of money or having a high net worth isn't just going to help you. It's going to help people around you if you use that to your advantage, right? It's going to help your family. You know, one of the number one causes of divorce is actually financial distress. So if you have a solid financial foundation, then hopefully that alleviates some issues in your personal life as well, right? You don't have to miss out on things in your life because you have to be working, right? You can have that flexibility to say, hey, look, I want to go to, my son's soccer game at 4:00 on a Tuesday, right? Not saying that's the time it would be at, but it's just the general idea is the more capital you have invested, the more free you can really be with your life. And so that's why I think it's very important to make hitting $1 million as soon as possible in your life a very important goal. And a lot of people should be, I don't want to say should, but yeah, I'm just going to say it, should be aiming for that, I think, if you want to live a good life. Look, the life that our parents, or not necessarily our parents, but other people used to live back in the 60s and the 70s and 80s and 90s, that lifestyle, unfortunately, is not existent anymore, right? We can't just go and buy a house for 20 grand on, 2 years worth of salary. It's not going to work, right? So back then, when people could easily afford certain financial milestones, like the car, like the house, not so much the car, but mostly the house. Unfortunately, that is, at least where I live, it's not really feasible anymore unless you're doing very well financially. Now, the problem is a lot of people who maybe don't have a lot invested are still purchasing these large assets like houses. They take out a massive mortgage, which in my opinion is a really stupid thing to do. And the reason is because you're going to be paying all this interest and principal, and basically the majority of your salary, again, we're assuming that you're a 9-to-5 employee here, a large percentage of that salary is going to be going into that mortgage, into that property, into maintenance, property tax, all these different things, right? So if we can at least put ourselves in a fantastic financial position with $1 million plus net worth by 35, then we have leverage, right? Then we can put, we can easily cover our mortgage payments on autopilot without having to actively go to work. If you get fired from your job and now you're collecting employment insurance, maybe it's not enough to make your mortgage payments if you really, really over leverage yourself there, right? So yeah, I think $1 million isn't what it used to be, right? By 35, it's still a pretty decent milestone, I would say. But it's something that, yeah, it really should become commonplace these days, because otherwise people are just going to really be struggling. And you've probably felt it yourself if you're under that 1 million mark, struggling with your finances and feeling like you're just not getting ahead no matter how hard you work at your job. So I hope you found this video somewhat insightful and useful. And, I'm not 35 yet. I'm not a millionaire yet, but I really hope it sheds some light on what it means to be financially free and why it's so important to start thinking about these large financial milestones at a fairly early age. So if you're interested in this kind of content, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.